Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am here for more Worlds 2022 group analysis and content. We went over Group A yesterday in that primer. If you have not checked out that video, I highly recommend you go and check that out. It's going to be up in the top right corner right now. But today, we are going to be talking about Group B. And while Group A was definitely an exciting group to talk about, there was a lot of very fun, very interesting teams. Obviously, every team at this World Championships this year, it feels like, is an interesting one to talk about. Group B is a fight to the death. This is your group of death of this World Championship. And so, if you guys are excited to hear my analysis on all three of the teams that are confirmed in this group in depth, as well as some predictions at the end, maybe with the fourth team thrown in there, let me know down in the comments section below. You know I love chatting it up with you guys. I know that some of my Worlds takes this year are definitely going to be a little bit surprising, I think, to some people. And so, if you see something on here that you're definitely shocked about, let's talk about it down in the comment section below. I definitely love having those conversations, but I don't want to waste too much of your time. We're going to be going over all three teams in depth, talking about all of the players on their team, their strengths, their weaknesses. I will be power ranking all of them. Now, this is going to be out of, at the moment, 17 teams. It's going to be the 15 major region teams that I covered on the channel all year long, as well as the 2 minor region teams that are slotted immediately into group stage. And so, any number you see power ranking wise is going to be out of 17, although really it doesn't matter because, it's, you know, I don't think any of the minor region teams from what I've seen so far are really all that able to hold up with some of the major region teams. So you can say it's out of 24, and it's really not going to change all that much. But let's go ahead and jump right into our first team here that we are going to be talking about in Group B. We're going to be going pool by pool by pool, starting with our Pool 1 seed here for Group B, and that is going to be your LPL Summer Split Champions, JD Gaming. A huge number 1 seed here. A lot of people are going to see this team as the best in the world, or at the very least one of the best in the world. I personally have them power ranked at number 2, and I know a lot of people might be a little contentious about this, but JDG comes in at number 2 for me. They were number 2 in my LPL power rankings before the playoffs, and really, going back and listening to how I was talking about them throughout my LPL playoff predictions, hell, even my award predictions, things like that, I had a lot more confidence in a team like JDG than I did in a team like Top Esports, because it really felt like they controlled the map really solidly, more than almost anybody else in the LPL. So for me, a little bit of a spoiler here, but they are going to come in as my number 1 LPL team here, coming in at number 2 in my power rankings as a whole. I'm sure you guys can guess who number 1 is at this point, but let's talk about JDG and what they do well. And that's basically everything. Like, once you hit this point where you're the, a top 1, 2, 3 team in the world, you don't really have, like, defined weaknesses. You have potential weaknesses and things that aren't quote-unquote massive strengths, but really nothing on this team, like, nobody on this team is bad by any stretch of the imagination. These are some of the best players in the world at their roles, and it really does start with the roles that I think we're going to be talking about a lot throughout the course of this Group B discussion, and that's going to be the jungle mid duo. I think that's going to be a big trend here for this group in particular, and JDG definitely accentuates that, as they have one of the most deadly jungle mid duo combos in the entire world. Top 3, in my opinion, absolutely, for sure, throughout the year in Kanavi and Yagao. And really, you could not have predicted me to say that at the beginning of the year. Certainly not something I expected, and I really don't think it's something that this team expected, but these two have really been dominantly good throughout the year. Kanavi, I think, was the best jungler in the LPL over the course of the summer split. Obviously, Tian won MVP, but I pushed back a little bit on that in my award predictions. Kanavi just does such a phenomenal job of creating that early pressure and just absolutely strangleholding the map. There's really nobody else who does it quite like him so consistently. Even Tian, I think, relies a bit on his laners being pushed up into good positions a little bit more than someone like Kanavi does, where Kanavi will quite literally just win the game by himself. And this team understands that. They are willing and able to dump a lot of resources into that jungle position because he is their best player, and he has been their best player for quite a long time. Really, every single time this JDG team has overperformed expectations, has really made that push for World Championships. I'm talking 2022, I'm talking 2020. Kanavi has looked like one of the best junglers in the world, and he continues to look like that right now. Obviously, it's a very, 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 very tough race in terms of junglers, like world junglers right now. You've got him, you've got Peanut, you've got Owner, you've got Tion. Like, there's a lot of really good world-class junglers right now. To me, Kanavi is just as good, if not better, than any of them at his absolute best. You see that on the champions that he has picked a lot of. Very aggressive picks, things that honestly I typically wouldn't encourage. I do encourage the Wukong, but not the Viego, not the Vi. These are picks that I'm not super into, but because he's able to generate so much pressure early, obviously because his solo lanes are helping out a lot with that too, but mostly because he is just so perfect. His pathing is perfect. Like, it is genuinely perfection. He is outpathing everybody in the LPL very, very consistently because he is so often in that position to be able to generate an early game lead, to be able to get a gank off wherever he feels it is most applicable. Those picks can really thrive. A pick like Viego that wants to snowball the game can really thrive. A pick like Vi, who is really strong in the early to mid game, and then really falls off in terms of damage, but still has the utility of being able to go in the late game. Kanavi can make a pick like that a little bit more effective overall because of his ability to so consistently win in the early game. So Kanavi, you're not going to have any questions with. I think he is the most locked of locked players on this JDG team. And then you have Yagao in the mid lane. Now, this is someone who I've been a little bit down on, I think, over the course of his career, at least in comparison to some of the best mid laners in the world. But what I have been saying all year long, I've been preaching the Church of Yagao all summer long. This is the best year of Yagao's career, and it's really not all that close. In my opinion, he really unlocked a different side of him in this meta. I think that has really been perfect for him. And I do think that's going to continue at the World Championships. I don't think the meta will switch all the way up and Yagao not being, you know, on these comfort picks anymore. But the picks like the Ahri, we see a billion games on the Ahri coming up from Yagao. Even the Talia. Like, these are super meta picks that are able to create their own advantages in lane by being able to shove. And then being able to make plays across the map, utilizing the player's macro awareness to be able to accelerate the game a lot, not only for yourself in the mid lane, but for your jungler, for potentially your top laner, for potentially your bot lane. There are so many ways that you can affect the map from the mid lane position at this point, and I think Yagao is kind of the poster child for how to do that effectively. He has been phenomenal. He was an MVP candidate in the LPL. If you're getting that version of Yagao here at Worlds with Kanavi, like, that is one of the best jungle mid duos in the world, period, end of story. Even if on paper you're looking at Kanavi and Yagao and you're like, well, in past years they've been good, but they haven't been great. This is a team that I think finished 9th last year. This is not that team anymore. They have completely unlocked their best potential here. I think a lot of the other players on the team have really helped with that, but even just Kanavi and Yagao, the JDG, longtime players, I should say, have really just become the focal point of this team. A lot runs through Kanavi, a lot runs through Yagao, and I don't expect that to change. As for the rest of this team, they still are world-class in pretty much every other aspect. I'm at the 3rd player on this team, and I haven't even talked about 369 yet. 369, I think you could make a real case, is the best top laner in the world right now. I think it's him, I think it's Zeus, I think it's Breathe. I think whichever direction you want to go in that regard, I'm not going to argue you too much because 369 has been so phenomenal. The carry potential out of the top lane throughout this split really hasn't been all that high in terms of like a general meta, but 369 has certainly said, well, you know, I'm going to change that. I'm going to buck that trend. A lot of Gangplank, he's super dominant on it, but even on the tanks, even on the Sedge, even on the Gnar, even on the Ornn, he's so ridiculously consistent at being able to dominate in these late game teamfights, whether it's positioning, whether it's phenomenal ultimates coming out from the Gnar, from the Ornn. 369 has just been the best version of himself. This is not the version that we saw a little bit on the decline as of last year. This is peak 369 all the way back, and that's going to cause an entirely new wrinkle for JDG, I think, when you face them. A lot of teams have really good jungle mid duos. We will get to a lot of them. Obviously, Top Esports, both of the other teams in this group that are already confirmed have really good jungle mid duos. What a lot of teams don't have in that position is one of the best top laners in the world. And fortunately for JDG, they have 369 and they have that element. So the top side of the map, really not scared or questioning at all. I think it's going to be incredibly consistent. I am not worried about it in the slightest. And then you have the bot lane. Now, if there ever was going to be a lane that was potentially exploitable, not easily exploitable certainly, but potentially exploitable. I do think it would be the bot lane here for JDG. I've been hyping up Hope and Missing as a very good bot lane in the LPL for quite a while, but they're not the takeover presence that I think some of the other bot lanes in the world can be. They're really not a lane that gets a lot of resources, especially Hope. Missing is often somewhere else. Even on these enchanters, you see a lot of games of Lulu, you see a lot of games of Renata. They do play the Lucian Nami relatively consistently, but even in situations like that, they're really not investing everything into that bot lane. They are very much the contingency plan for JDG. Hope does a very good job playing some of these more late game hyper carries. Obviously, Aphelios being what he is most known for. It's something that he's always played a lot of, going back to basically the start of his professional career. He's really been someone who wants to scale up a little bit more, wants to play a little bit safer in laning phase, and then assist in the back half of the game. 369, Kanavi, Yigao, they are going to be your central carries of the team, whereas Hope, not so much. Now, typically I would be a little bit scared of that in an ADC-dominated meta, but honestly, I think that plays into JDG's advantage because they do such a good job of absorbing pressure. Missing especially has been so phenomenal this year at taking pressure and being able to redistribute it across the map to the places that they need to do, that they need to put it in order to get the most out of the team. They have phenomenal objective control, phenomenal timings. Pretty much everything about this team's macro is great, and they also have phenomenal micro positioning. They have phenomenal, laning presence. They have a phenomenal bot lane 2v2. They have a phenomenal top lane 1v1. Really, there's just not a lot of weaknesses for this team. So, strengths, pretty much across the board, they are incredibly consistent. They have a strategy, and they can execute it on it really, really, really consistently. But even if they don't, they have multiple outs to that. Like, let's say Kanavi and Yigao aren't generating the same kind of leads that they absolutely need to. Well, then just go start playing towards 369 in the top lane, because he can win you games. Let's say that all three of your top side, they're investing everything into that top side, leaving bot lane wide open. Well, Hope's going to be on something that's going to scale into the game, and if he gets there, he's going to be able to do a lot of damage, and Missing certainly is going to be a good enough macro player to be able to accelerate him to get there. So overall, I think the consistency of JDG is really, really a positive for them. In my opinion, they are one of the top two most consistent teams here. That's why I have them ranked in the top two. Now, weaknesses, if I did have to have a weakness, it would be that I'm not sure they have a top 5 guaranteed player in the world. Now, Kanavi can be that. I truly do believe that Kanavi can be that, but I don't think they have a Chovy. I don't think they have a Knight. Like, that kind of presence where it's like, if everything goes wrong, you can count on that player to win you the game. I don't think it's really gonna matter. Like, that's honestly, at that point, like, pulling on strings. Like, it's really like there's no, I don't see that as a big issue, but if I had to come up with a weakness, it would be the fact that there have been times that Kanavi has struggled, and obviously going back to Worlds 2020, a lot of people saw that run as a little bit disappointing for JDG because they couldn't make it out of quarterfinals. Yes, they did lose to the team that ended up making the finals and Suning that year in the quarterfinals, but a lot of people wanted to see that team go a lot farther, and it just seemed like they didn't have that potential. I think this team in 2022 is a significantly improved version of them. And if you're getting a better version of what you had in 2020, this team has a really, really good shot to be one of the teams that has the best chance at hoisting the Summoners Cup at the end of the year. Moving on to our Pool 2 team now here in Group B. And our Pool 2 team is definitely one I've been excited to talk about. This is a ranking that might shock a lot of people, but our Pool 2 team is going to be G2 Esports, the second seed from the LEC here. And they come into my power rankings at number 8. And I know that's going to be high for a lot of people. They're actually, to me, a top 8 team in the world, even after getting 3-0'd in the finals. And I'll go into that. And mostly, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people in my comment section who aren't happy about this, but, I have to do my analysis true to how I actually feel. And true to how I actually feel, I think the finals was a fluke. And that's the best I can say. I can't sit here and watch a year of G2 and a year of Rogue and watch every best of 5 that they played and not come to the conclusion that G2 is definitively the better team. And I know that's crazy because Rogue just beat them, but there's just something about how that series went. It didn't feel right. Like, especially on rewatch, that wasn't G2. Like, I don't think Rogue beat G2. I think Rogue beat some team that showed up. I don't expect that to be the G2 that shows up at Worlds. And so for me, they are higher in the power rankings. In fact, they're the highest ranked Western team in my power rankings. I don't think that would surprise a lot of people if I said it a couple of weeks ago. It's going to surprise some people when I say it now. Sorry to all the Rogue fans out there. I actually have a lot of faith in you as well. We will get to that once we get to that group. But G2 here comes in at number 8. And I actually think that's pretty accurate for where they're at. They're probably not as good as the best Eastern teams, but they probably are the best Western team, or the best of the rest, if you want to call it. At least that's how I felt it. The top 7 feel very much locked in whatever order you want to put them in. Everybody else definitely feels like they could be up for debate. G2 comes in at number 8 for me, mostly because, again, of their star talent. I think the top end of this team is better than the top end of any other team that you're going to be talking about from 8 downwards. And I really don't even think it's all that close. We talked about how this is the group of mid-jungle duos, and that is exemplified by G2 Esports because you have Jankos and you have Caps. And when you have those two players on the world stage, I'm going to have more faith in you than I am going to have in other teams because these two have proven over and over and over again that they are able and willing to step up on the biggest stages, and they are able to beat good teams, even with sometimes less than stellar talent around them. We can talk about these G2 super teams, but let's not forget about what 2018 was, obviously before Caps got here, but this G2 team that had Hjarnan and Wadid that went to semifinals, right? Like, this is an organization that I think, and Jankos especially, has proven over and over again that he can step up in the clutch. I think the finals performance is certainly not indicative of where this team is at. I expect a lot of the players to be able to step up. That's not to say they don't have their weaknesses, but their strengths are just so strong. Jankos is such a good jungler at being able to facilitate. I actually think Jankos has that style of play that translates incredibly well towards playing against better teams. He's not someone that is a pub stomper, you know, maybe like someone like Blabber, right? Where you have a jungler where when he gets that lead, he's able to just snowball it out of control. The more consistently he's able to beat the enemy jungler, the more consistently he's going to dominate the game. I don't think that's what Jankos is. Jankos, I think, has a phenomenal understanding of map state and of timings and of pathing, and I think that often puts him in a position where maybe he's not dominant, but he's never, ever out of the game. And I think when you have a jungler like that, that even against some of the best junglers in the world, against Kanavi, against, you know, Canyon, who we'll talk about here in a bit, I think Jankos is the kind of jungler that can hold his own in those matchups, and that's going to be absolutely crucial. We see a lot of really aggressive picks coming out from him in the LEC. That just is the meta right now. I think Jankos does thrive on these early game aggressive junglers, being able to enable a lot of his lanes. That's always what he's wanted to do, is he's wanted to make sure that his lanes are in the best state possible. I think picks like the Wukong, picks like the Trundle especially, I think are going to be absolutely ginormous for this G2 team throughout Worlds, as they really accentuate, I think, a lot of what Jankos does at his absolute best. And so I really don't have a lot of question marks about Jankos. The same goes for Caps in the mid lane. We can talk about how Rogue absolutely steamrolled over G2 in the finals. Caps was really the one who didn't have a bad series. Not to say that he was good, and he certainly wasn't good enough to carry, but Caps was a little bit more consistent, and at the end of the day, this is the best Western player of all time. He still is Caps. Like, we've seen it multiple times throughout the season, throughout playoffs, that when he wants to turn it on, he absolutely can. I'm not going to take this finals performance where he couldn't carry a team that was getting beaten almost every single lane as Caps is washed. You know, he's never going to be able to bounce back. He is still the best player in the West, and I really don't have a lot of question saying that. He was phenomenal this year when he could get online, and I really do think G2 is going to be more willing to invest in him on the world stage. Players like Broken Blade and Flocket have shown more of a willingness, I think, to take a backseat as of recently. And I think that is only going to continue here at Worlds, as Jankos and Caps really are going to be, I think, the focal points of what a lot of this team wants to do. So those are the two players that I'm really not at all concerned about. Now, there are two other players on this team that I think really stepped up over the course of the year and really exceeded my expectations, really became some of the best players in their role in the West. And the first one is going to be Broken Blade up in the top lane. We just talked about this with JDG. You can have a great jungle mid duo, but it is absolutely phenomenal to be able to not have to rely on them. If you can put a lot of pressure into the top side and feel comfortable about being able to win that matchup. I'm certainly not on the same train with Broken Blade that I was for 369. He's not quite the same level of, I can pretty much see him beating anybody in the world, but Broken Blade is this player, and that I've talked about for many years, is really good with resources. In fact, that was my biggest criticism of Broken Blade for so many years, is it really felt like he wasn't a great player unless he got a lot of resources. He always played so aggressive, but I think over the course of the year, we really saw Broken Blade tone down a lot of those over-aggressive tendencies, start to get a bit more consistent. There was a reason that he came in as my first team all-pro top laner this split, and it's because I really feel like he took a lot of the strengths that he had of being able to carry the game from the top lane in the mid to late if he is ahead in gold, and just took away a lot of the weaknesses in that if he was behind in gold, he was still going to run it down and try to carry the game, and he was just going to be a problem for your team. He took that away, and so Broken Blade, I do think, has become a pretty big positive for this team. Now, I'm a little bit worried about how the meta suits him. We're definitely going towards more of a passive top lane meta, a more tank-oriented top lane meta. I'm really not sure if that's going to be super in favor of Broken Blade, but it's something that we're going to have to keep a lookout for. He has shown so much improvement over the course of the year that I expect him to at least be fine. And then you've got the bot lane here for G2. And I don't want to be super down on them because I really do like Targamas. I think Targamas is a very good player, a Worlds caliber player coming out of the LEC. He really showed that throughout the year. I think his adaptation of really going towards this more, like, supportive style, not even like the Enchanter style, but just this more, like, passive style here, I think has been really positive for G2. The Lulu, the Senna, the Tahm Kench, I think all things that really line up with how this team likes to play, where Flakked likes to be a lot more aggressive here, and Targamas can be the enabler. Whether that is on an engager like Tom, whether that's on more of an enchanter like Lulu, I think Targamas really has the full package here. I really, really like him as a player, and I think he definitely deserves to be here, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit concerned about Flakked. This bot lane got burned, roasted, completely destroyed in the finals, and they are the biggest concern I have out of G2. That's really where it feels like it wasn't so much of a fluke. It really does feel like Comp and Trimby just decimated Flakked and Targamas, and that's going to be maybe a problem for G2. Now, luckily for them, I think they get drawn into a group where they don't really have to face a team that really is going to invest a ton into their bot lane. JDG doesn't really invest a ton into Hope and Missing. DAMWON doesn't really invest a ton into Dekdom and Kellen, but they're still going to have to live up to their, you know, billing here as a 2 seed in the 2v2 in the bot lane, and I'm just going to get a little concerned about that. Obviously, a ton of success here on the Draven. It's a pick that obviously Flakked is super duper comfortable with. I would expect them to try to go to that whenever they can and try to make sure that he can get online. But if they can't get that, whatever, you know, late game scaling ADC ends up being the top one of the meta. Obviously, Zeri Sivir isn't going to be quite the meta that we're looking for at Worlds, most likely, at least, unless teams are just unwilling to adapt. Whatever ends up being the big pick there in bot lane, I would just expect G2 to go a little bit more meta there, look to put their resources into the top lane, and just hope and pray that this bot lane can hold up. I definitely am a little bit worried about them, but if they were ever going to get drawn into a group that they could maybe survive a little bit easier in, I do think it is probably this group, Group B here. So, overall, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this team? Well, strengths is top-level talent. They have Jankos and they have Caps. There's really just not a lot of teams at Worlds that are going to be offering that level of duo, especially from the West. Like, they are really the best duo that you're going to be getting out of any of the Western teams, maybe with the exception of, like, Blabber, Berserker, but even then, like, Jankos and Caps have proven it on the international stage more than the other two have, and so I don't really think there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be in G2 situation and aren't going to be able to, like, they're going to be able to push, I think, beyond what a lot of people in their spot normally would be able to do. They also have incredibly emerging consistent talents in Broken Blade and Targamas, but they do have a pretty defined weakness in their bot lane. I think they got super exploited in the finals, and I think that could only get worse if teams really do want to punish them down in that bottom lane. But outside of that, I think this team is going to be the best Western team at Worlds. I do think that this star talent should be able to carry them to at least a couple of wins over some of the best teams that they're going to be facing. This is going to be an incredibly difficult group for them to get out of, and we'll get to that in the predictions. But if any team is going to be able to get out of this group of death from the West, it is going to be G2 Esports. All right, it is now time for the third and final team that we are going to be going over in depth here in this video. It's our Pool 3 team here in Group B, our LCK third seed. Of course, I'm talking about DAMWON Kia here coming in as the third and final team that is confirmed here for Group B. We will obviously be getting into some predictions and potential fourth teams in a bit, but DAMWON here at number 3 obviously makes this an incredibly difficult group. You have JDG, you have G2, you have DAMWON. These are all teams that I could conceivably see making it out of the group stage. DAMWON, for me, very surprisingly, this is certainly going to make a lot of people mad, comes in at number 6 in my power rankings, above a team that I think a lot of people are really excited for, but DAMWON comes into my power rankings here at number 6. I do think they are a good team. I honestly think it's pretty crazy how we have started to perceive DAMWON throughout the year. I think a lot of people have been super out on this team, and at times I get it, and at times I really don't. Like, they are a good League of Legends team, and I've been pretty adamant about that in my LCK reviews throughout the entire year. I've been pretty adamant that I think this team has been the third best team in the LCK, even when there were some Magic teams going on, teams like Live Sandbox, teams like KT Rolster that were really showing a lot of promise. I've stuck to my guns pretty much throughout the entire year and said that I think DAMWON is the third best team, and they went out and they proved it in the gauntlet, pretty easily taking care of Live Sandbox, having a pretty easy time with that. I think it was also shown in playoffs when Gen G chose to face Live Sandbox over facing DAMWON here, that I think a lot of teams do feel like they are the third best team, and I think they are going to prove a lot of people wrong here at the World Championships. I have a lot of confidence in this team. I think a lot more than other people. I still think this is a team that could potentially be a World Finals team if things go right. But again, we've talked about consistent themes here in Group B, being the jungle mid duo. That goes right back here to DAMWON Gaming because they have the best jungle mid duo of all time. Now, they really haven't played like it over the course of this year, but Canyon and Showmaker, historically, are the best jungle mid duo in the history of League of Legends. That is pretty clear to me, and I think that's been proven, and honestly, I think Canyon has gotten a lot of flame this year for a lot of things that aren't entirely his fault. And yes, I think Canyon sometimes can get a little over-aggressive, but you're looking at 24 wins in the regular season for DAMWON. I would bet to wager that 17, 18 of those were Canyon, and that says a lot to me, right? When you are someone who can actively propel your team to big wins against good teams, like Canyon did show up against good teams. He was really huge in the regional qualifier here for this team, a reason that they were able to so confidently grab that number 3 seed. And I think Canyon here has been almost underrated by the whole community, which is crazy to say because he's the greatest jungler of all time. To say that he's underrated feels like a crazy sentiment, but I feel like the reports and the idea of his demise are just not true. They're just not real. The rumors of his demise have been greatly exaggerated, if you want to use the funny phrase. So I still think Canyon is one of the best junglers in the world, and I think he's going to get the chance to prove it in this group. I mean, an absolutely brutal group for junglers if you are a team that wants to play through that, because you have to face Kanavi. You even have to face Yankos. Hell, you might have to face Inspired, who might be the best jungler coming out of North America. I mean, Blabber versus Inspired, whatever you want to say, right? But like, this is not the easiest group for junglers. There are certainly other options that might have been a little bit easier in terms of taking over from that part of the map. Canyon is certainly going to get his chance to prove that he is still one of the best junglers in the world, and honestly, I have faith that he is going to be able to prove that. I'll talk about predictions at the end, but Canyon's honestly a really good player, and I think he's going to show up here on the world stage. As for Showmaker, now, I'm definitely a little bit more willing to listen to Showmaker just not being the same guy he was last year. I do believe that. He definitely has taken a step back, I think more so than someone like Canyon has, but at the end of the day, it's still Showmaker, and just because it's not his meta, just because picks like the Lissandra, like the Talia, like the Silas, aren't exactly the things that he is most known for, things that he's going to be taking over the game on, it doesn't mean he's a bad player. He's still a pretty consistently good player that doesn't really ever offer you a situation where you're going to be like, oh no, we have to protect him. He's not going to be this dominant lane carry player that he was last year or 2 years ago, but he is still a very, very good player, and if Canyon does want to put resources into him, if they want to go to something a little bit more aggressive, if they want to, surprisingly go to something like the Azir, I do think that Showmaker still is Showmaker, and he can capitalize on that. They just really haven't shown a lot of propensity to want to go to something like that throughout the year, and so I'm really not all that confident that they're going to do that here at Worlds. If they continue down the same path, Showmaker will be fine, he just won't be a huge positive. Then, I guess if we're continuing the trend with how we talked about some of the rest of the teams, we're going to talk about top lane here. We're going to talk about Nuguri in the top lane now. This top lane situation is super confusing because Nuguri obviously is the better top laner, and he gives them the much better chance at winning here. He's been playing tanks all throughout the year, and I think he's shown a good propensity to survive in the top lane matchup. He is not the Nuguri of 2020, when this team was genuinely unbeatable. Hell, he's probably not even the Nuguri of last year's FPX team, but he is still a good player, and I think his role has just shifted. They have tried out playing Bertle a bit throughout this season, and it's just not something that I think has been all that good for them. Bertle has been able to win playoff series with this team, but I just think Nuguri gives you such a bigger upside as a top lane player that I would expect to see him for a majority of this World Championships. If you're getting Bertle, you are getting a much more aggressive player. It's crazy to say that Nuguri has become the more shield of the Sword and Shield dynamic, but that's really how it's felt, where when he plays, he's not getting a lot of resources. He's often left on weak side. You see his most played champions, Sejuani and Gnar, and that's really what you're expecting out of Nuguri at this point. He can pick up some of the more aggressive ones, but with the meta moving more towards that tank top lane ideology, I think closer to Worlds, there are going to be, I think, a lot more viable tanks going into the World Championships. I would expect to see a lot more of Nuguri, and I would expect to just see him more on that weak side top lane. Not on that same level of like 369 and Broken Blade in that sense of, I think both of them really do have that carry potential. Nuguri obviously can have that, but he hasn't had that, I think, for a majority of the year. So we're really going to have to see something else out of him in order for me to feel confident about this team being able to win through top lane. Now, I think what this team has that maybe the other two teams don't have is a bot lane that they do invest in. DAMWON and Kellen for DAMWON here, I think a lot of people look at them as a little bit of a weak link for DAMWON, but really, I don't think they have been at all this year. In fact, I think they both exceeded my expectations for what I expected of them. They have been the focal point of the resources for this team for a lot of the year. You can talk about how JDG really likes to invest in their jungle mid duo. You can talk about how G2 likes to invest in jungle mid and then top if they need to. DAMWON invests in the jungle, but they really do invest a lot into that bot lane. Canyon is often generating a lot of leads down there, whether it's on some of the late game picks. Obviously, Dectum's Aphelios, you're not going to allow him to have it if you're smart. That's his signature pick. It has been since last year on Nongshim. It's just not something that you want to give up to him. Or they go to Lucian Nami all the freaking time on this team, and they really want to generate that gold early in the bot lane, be able to snowball it out of control with a lot of help from Canyon. That's something that I could see DAMWON actually generating a lot of leads from, where I talked about a team like G2 having some weaknesses in the bot lane, having a bot lane that is going to potentially be able to lose the 2v2. And I think JDG is in a similar spot. If they're put in a position where they're getting a lot of attention in the bot lane, I'm not sure if Hope and Missing are going to be able to hold up without Kanavi like roaming and helping them out and kind of moving off of his game plan. And so I actually think this bot lane could be a pretty huge positive in this group for DAMWON, so long as they continue to play the way that they do against some of the top teams. We've seen Dectum and Kellen also falter a bit against some of the worst teams in the LCK. I often think that's just a mental focus problem, and I certainly don't think they're going to have a focus problem at Worlds, but if you're getting the good version of Dectum and Kellen, I could actually see this being maybe the best bot lane in the group, which I don't think a lot of people would expect going into it, but for me, I think would be a pretty easy bet to make if they are going to invest in it like they did. So, what are this team's strengths? What are this team's weaknesses? Well, the strengths of this team are experience. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got 3 world champions on this roster. You've got Dectum and Kellen, who are players in the LCK. I mean, Dectum maybe not so much a long-time player, but Kellen certainly has had experience on the world stage in the past. You have plenty of players here that know how to win on this stage, and that's always a good thing to have. Hopefully nerves won't be as big of a problem. You also have, like I said for G2, just top-tier talent. Canyon is a top-tier talent in the world in terms of mechanics. Showmaker is a top-tier talent in terms of the world of mechanics. And if they can play up to their best, which they haven't so far this year, but there is reason to believe that that is still in them, if they can play up to their best, like this is one of the best teams in the world. They're not going to come in as one of my best teams in the world. They're coming in at number 6, but if this is a team that did sneak into the top 3, top 4 teams, I really wouldn't be all that surprised because they do have the talent to do it. But what are their weaknesses? Well, it's been the consistency. Canyon can overextend. He often feels, I think, like the pressure of the game is on him to generate that lead to win the game for DAMWON, and that can lead to scenarios where he's in positions where he can actively lose his team the game, which isn't always great, but when he's on, he's good. When he's off, he's bad. Nuguri, Showmaker, they need to step up. They need to start being able to win those 1v1s more consistently. Hopefully the meta is more in Showmaker's favor in terms of being able to carry from that mid lane position, not so much be that supportive player. That's really not his style. And then for Nuguri, I think he just needs to get a little bit more consistent in the top lane of not being so aggressive every single time that he picks something that isn't a tank. And then bot lane. I think bot lane just needs to hit that top point for them to be good. I really do believe they could be the best bot lane in the group, and I hope they are able to prove that throughout the group stage. So overall, I actually think DAMWON's probably being underrated by a majority of the fans going into this tournament. I think they're going to be a very, very scary team for pretty much anybody to face. A team that very realistically could take a game off of pretty much anybody, especially in a best of 1. And I'm really excited to see if they prove me right throughout this group stage and throughout the world stage just in general. All right, well, that is going to do it for my Group B in-depth analysis of all three teams that are officially confirmed for the group. JDG, G2, and DAMWON. Up on the screen right now, you are going to be seeing my predictions for how I think this group is going to go, and no huge surprises here, although I do think it is potentially volatile. I think I'm very locked in, at least in predicting that JDG will win the group. I certainly think there is a world that DAMWON could theoretically be able to win this group, especially if they go 1-1 in the group stage, because I could truly see G2 taking a game off of basically either of them in a best of one, just because G2 is one of those teams that just can win any game that they're in because of the talent level that they have. And so if they were to take a game off of JDG and then maybe, you know, they split with DAMWON, DAMWON goes 5-1, JDG goes 4-2, I honestly wouldn't be all that surprised. But for now, I just can't predict that, right? JDG has been the most consistent team throughout the LPL all year long. They're the team I would most expect to do well on the world stage, and they should be able to consistently do well in the group stage. It's kind of a format that's made for them. They're really good in best of ones, and so I would imagine that they are going to be able to win this group. I have DAMWON coming out in second place here. I just think they are more talented than G2. Honestly, like I said, I think the bot lane diff is going to be absolutely huge between these two teams. I think the difference between Dekdom and Kellen and Flacket and Targamas is gigantic. Even if I don't think the difference between Canyon and Showmaker and Yankos and Caps is like as big as it would have been a couple of years ago, I still think DAMWON is a team that should be able to get out of this group. Now, if G2 were to upset DAMWON or something like that, it really wouldn't be that much of a surprise. Like I said, G2 is the best Western team. And so if any Western team I'm going to feel confident about making it out, like if there's any of them, it's going to be G2. And so I could see a world in which G2 can pick up a win here on DAMWON, can pick up a win maybe even on JDG, put themselves in a 3-3 position where they can win a tiebreaker. I can definitely see that being a real possibility for this team. It's just not something that I think I'm going to be willing to predict. I would say that JDG, DAMWON, I feel very confident about those being the two teams that are going to make it out of this group in terms of predictions. That leaves G2 at number 3. Like I said, definitely some options. And then number 4 seed, a few options here. It could be most likely if they make it out, it's going to be Evil Geniuses, which is not a great draw for EG. We're going to talk about them in depth when we get to the play-in stage, but you couldn't really ask for a worse draw if you are the EG team. This is the complete group of death, and if they get in this, it's going to be an easy 4th place. As much as I like this EG team, I really just don't see them being able to stack up to any of the other 3 teams in this group. It could also be Mad Lions or Fnatic, and I would have very similar thoughts about both of those teams. In fact, you know, no spoilers, but I'm not convinced that either of them are even better than EG, you know, outright. And so overall, unfortunately, whoever gets put in this group is probably just going to flounder out. Maybe they take a game off of G2. Maybe they take a big shock win over DAMWON, who really can lose almost any game. Something like that could theoretically happen, but I don't see this team, I don't see whatever team makes it here in 4th winning more than, you know, 1 or 2 games in the group stage. I really don't see a world in which they make it out of this group. And so for me, it's a 3-horse race. If I had to predict which 2 of those 3 are going to make it, for now, JDG feels the most confident, and then I'm going to go with DAMWON at number 2. But G2 definitely could be a team that sneaks into it in the end. But that's going to do it for my Group B overview. If you guys enjoyed, let me know down in the comments section below. Obviously, let me know how you feel about my predictions, about my power rankings. Obviously, I wanted to go with my gut feeling. I really wanted to go with something that I truly believed in terms of my power rankings this year. So there's going to be a lot of controversial takes that I don't think a lot of people are going to fully agree with. And that's great. That's what I love to hear. We can all have our different power rankings, and we can all, you know, have our conversations about how that's going to go. Let me know yours down in the comment section below. Let me know what 2 teams you think are going to be getting out of this group, and what you expect from the teams that aren't. Obviously, I love hearing you guys' opinions. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to hit that like button. Obviously, it helps support the channel a ton. If you want to see more of this world's content, obviously, Group A came out yesterday. We're going to be putting out Group C and D throughout this, as well as the play-in stage. We're going to be doing a top 20 players at Worlds video, as well as a meta report, all before we get to our daily coverage of the World Championships when it starts. So if you guys are excited for that, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you can be notified when those videos go live. But with all that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.